Welcome back to the PI Show, viewers. And before the break, we were discussing rehabilitation and return to work with Katrine Green and Martin Smith. Katrine, you had an example of a case study. Can you give us that?
Well, one injured worker that came to see me for a vocational assessment, this gentleman was of Vietnamese origin, and he had some fingers cut off on his right dominant hand. And as a result of that, apart from his physical restrictions, he was a machinist in a factory. He had developed post-traumatic stress disorder, which meant that his symptoms were such that he could not return to an industrial working environment. Now, this gentleman spoke very little English, and in fact, he had very few literacy skills from his country of origin. So it was very difficult to determine what sort of work he may be able to do, and a return to work plan as such could not involve light packing, because in fact his fingers made that type of work particularly difficult for him.
This particular person, Martin, was his English was very poor. He was very young, I think. I do remember the case. But first and foremost, I would have thought you have to improve his English and his literacy and things like that.
It's another couple of layers of difficulties that Katrine's just highlighted. Here we've got ethnic background, ability to communicate in English. Now he's got the fear factor. He can't work near machinery.
Well, no, that's
And so we've got a few more extra restrictions on what we'd already just discussed.
And the fact that he's young, you wouldn't want to write him off, would you?
Well, of course not. It's very important that he becomes rehabilitated and eventually gets himself into a suitable job that is both accommodating of his physical restrictions and also his psychological.
Can I say that in the short term, it probably wouldn't be a bad thing if they got him back to, say, 15 or 20 hours a week, just to get him acclimatised. And the beauty of the amendments to the legislation, which took place some time ago, is that he would be compensated for the hours he can't work. So it gives him some encouragement to get back in there and hopefully get back to full-time employment in due course. So
that would be the ideal, yes. But just on the point of English language skills, when non-English speaking people are endeavouring to learn English, they need intense training, not 1 or 2 hours a week for 2 or 3 months. I mean, it's a long process. Yeah. And often, after they've developed English language skills, if they are unable to go back to their original occupation, they really do require vocational training that's substantial, that will give them work skills that they can go and pursue another occupation.
In some cases, they may never learn. I've got my mother-in-law who's been here 50 years, still can't speak English.
I've got a case where that's another good news story, or one that I was quite humbled when I met the fellow. He was a paraplegic out of a car accident, and he was a farmer, cattle farmer, and also a timber miller. I went up and met him up at his farm in Corryong. I was so humbled by the guy when they hadn't done all the rehabilitation requirements for him, so he whistles up his horse, Dusty. Dusty comes over, kneels down, he puts a saddle on it, he lifts himself out of his wheelchair, gets on the horse, tells Dusty to stand up, goes over to the gate, tells Dusty to kneel down, opens the gate, the horse kneels down the other side, closes it again. This guy had motivation like I have never come across in my life. The good news about that story was, in due course, TAC provided him with an ATV. They provided him with a UHF-CB, because have a guess what happened one day. He went out on Dusty, up at Corryong at Snows, and the saddle slipped. So here he is going along very slowly with Dusty on his knuckles and got to the corner fence where his brother came and found him in the dark. Now, I was, as I said, humbled. It's an emotional case for me to talk about, but that was a fellow that was totally motivated. He got the appropriate stuff in due course, and it was a great news story.
I'd say that gentleman was probably also very determined, yes. But that's a characteristic that not everyone has, and it's part of our personality, and we have to understand, I guess, that everyone has different personalities, and that's also a factor as well.
Katrine, is it fair to say that out of 10 people you see, a fair proportion of them would get back to something in due course, but there would be failures.
There are failures. Some of those failures are because of age. For example, I saw a lady recently and she had worked in a factory for all her life. She'd done the one job for all of her working life with different employers, but she had a very stable work history. She was 59. She had a low level of education. I mean, really, the point of training her or retraining her, her literacy skills were not particularly good.
Well, it was a waste of money, in other words.
Well, I mean, sometimes people at that age, if they've got particular recreational interests that can, in fact, be transferred to the workforce, then that may be an option, but I just couldn't see this lady being successful in a return to work.
Okay, good point.
Okay.
Rehabilitation, it's more than what we've, just the heading there you are, you're talking about education, age again. At 59, it's different to somebody who is 23. You would hope that you could persevere with a young one and find something that they can adapt to.
Well, I think we owe it to younger injured people, whether it's through work or a motor vehicle accident or even a sporting injury, to in fact ensure that they are given some form of meaningful employment in due course.
And Katrina, at what point in time would you like to see someone, if you're going to try and encourage them to get back to some sort of suitable alternative employment?
Early intervention is the best.
Okay. Look, Katrina, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
As I said before, it's a positive onus on employers to offer suitable work to their injured workers or light work, and it's very, very important that they consider all the options. The beauty of it is rehabilitation is expensive, and if the employers have got an obligation to ensure that that they engage in these things of trying to get people back to work, the beauty of it is that at least the expenses are there to the injured person. So,
Tony, I'd like to go back to what you said before. Don't write people off.
No.
Like the 59 was an example, I accept that, but don't write people off. As you said, somebody could go back to work part-time, 15 hours, have a very productive life, only on a part-time basis, be able to adapt because of some of their recreational skills.
And they'd also be compensated. Look, we're going to have to go to a break, Marty, and then come back with Viv's mailbag. But once again, thanks, Katrina, for coming on board.
Pleasure.
And we'll probably try and get you again sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Viewers.